welcome to the Therapy Corner. In this show, what we try to do is give you a little idea as to what psychotherapy and counseling is all about and some of the issues that surround psychotherapy and counseling. We also want to dispel any myths there may be regarding things of a mental health nature. So today, I have with me Julia Reynoso, who is an associate marriage, family, and therapy therapist. And she is here to help me discuss some of the basics in terms of why we come to therapy. So, Julia, thank you for joining me.
Thank you for having me.
What I would like to do is first off state that I've been licensed for over 40 years and now entering, what I would consider the third generation of doing psychotherapy. It's kind of refreshing, I believe, to have someone like you to discuss this with, because has the reasons for people to enter into therapy changed, or is it still the same? So I'm going to ask you, when you see people coming into therapy, why are they coming?
A lot of times what we're seeing nowadays is mainly anxiety and depression. Those seem to be the main two reasons that are bringing people in. Now, them having the words to put to exactly what they're feeling is something that we can help them with. Those terms are often thrown around loosely. I'm anxious, I have anxiety, or I'm depressed, I have depression. But what exactly is each individual person experiencing that's causing them to come to that conclusion and bringing them into our office?
That's pretty much what we've seen for the last 40 years. There's been seemingly, though, lately an increase that I've become aware of, at least in my own personal practice, with anxiety and depression. It seems to be coming more to the forefront. Do you think that's a basic issue of our day and age, or do you think maybe people are willing to recognize it more and deal with it?
I think it's a combination of both, actually. I think it is our day and age that is causing a lot of these symptoms with different individuals. But I also think just therapy becoming a little bit more normalized and not so stigmatized is also helping us to get people in our offices that normally wouldn't be in our office. I think mainly before we would see a lot of midlife crisis, and that's a good reason to go to therapy because it's midlife, it's this big issue. But now more and more we're seeing different transitions at different ages that are bringing people into therapy. So we may see the young college student that's just leaving home. That's a transition, and that's kind of a crisis for them. Then we have the midlife. Then we have, the older elderly generation. So I think we're getting a more variety of ages and ranges of people coming into therapy now than maybe 40 years ago.
It's interesting you should say that, because Gail Sheehy wrote a book, I think it's over 30 years ago, it was called Passages, and it dealt specifically with what you're talking about in terms of these transitions. And I guess people don't realize it, but as we grow and go through life, there are these transitional periods. I mean, the obvious ones are like when you get married, when you have children, and as you said, when they go off to school, and the empty nest syndrome, for instance, or even the famous or infamous midlife crisis where the guy's running off with the blonde and the red Corvette. These are there, but you pointed out something very interesting there. They seem to be more intense now at a younger age than they used to be. Is that what you're seeing with your younger folks?
Yeah, I am actually. I've seen a lot of younger adults coming into therapy and just not knowing quite how to navigate the symptoms they're having or what's going on, what they're experiencing in their life. And oftentimes their parents aren't equipped to assist them with these symptoms that they may be having. So sometimes parents are calling and trying to get their kids in, but it still is very much a hush-hush community of people that come into therapy. And I would like the community to know that therapy doesn't necessarily mean that you have a severe mental illness, which there is help for that, but sometimes we just need to exercise that our mental state, just checking in and making sure, are we functioning as we should be? When something's off, when we recognize something's off, or say an early adult recognizes something's off, or their parents know my kid's just not acting normal or what they usually act like, then that usually will cause them to make a phone call and bring them in.
Yeah, it's sort of interesting. You brought up a few points there I'd like to touch on. One is parenting and the real significance of parenting. And at some point in this show, in another show, I hope to bring in a person who does a lot of parenting work, and we'll talk about that because I have seen that over and over and over. And when I teach at college, I really make an emphasis on them as future parents and how they raise their children. So we'll talk about that hopefully in another show. The other thing that you mentioned was the stigmatization of mental health issues. And we tend to look at it as an illness. It's an old medical model, which always bothered me. And the basis for that, I teach this, it goes way back to when syphilis, started showing up in people and mental illness started being related to syphilis. And so the medical model just took over. And so now we pop pills for everything from grief to, mild anxiety, which is, in my mind, inappropriate, and we can address that at a later date. The stigmatization really bothers me, and it does keep people from coming to therapy. What would you think would be a good way to let people know that, there's nothing wrong with coming to therapy? It's a good thing.
Yeah, and just letting people know there's a range of reasons that can bring somebody into therapy. It could be something like bereavement, that you've lost someone and you're just dealing with those feelings. Or it could be I'm transitioning and leaving my household for the first time and I need help with these feelings that I'm having. It doesn't seem like it's a big deal. Everyone does this and deals with it, but they can come in with us where we can sit down and piece apart these specific feelings that they're having towards these particular issues. So just letting people know that it doesn't have to be something serious, but it's just something that is affecting you and your functioning at that time in your life. Give us a call, come in, let's talk about it. What's causing this change in feelings that you're having, whatever symptoms they may be experiencing at the time.
What do you think it is that people are afraid of, excuse me, that people are afraid of with coming to therapy? Because I know there are people out there that say, oh gosh, I'm not going to go to therapy. God forbid, don't get me into that thing.
Yeah.
What are you seeing? What have you heard?
I think it can be seen as a weakness. People think that they're not coming for something serious enough, that it's a waste of time or a waste of money because it's not a major issue, what somebody else may consider as a major issue. They're not realizing that each person's individual, so what you may be able to handle, I may not be able to handle. And so that's keeping them out of therapy, and just what other people might think. It might look weak on the outside of our family. I've had kids come in and say, my parents don't know I'm here. They would be upset. They just feel like there's other ways to handle issues without bringing a stranger in to our business.
Glad you said that, stranger. Because a lot of people will go to friends and family members. They're not exactly unbiased, are they?
No, they're not.
They've got sometimes their own agendas.
Yes.
One of the things that I really emphasize with clients the first day they come to see me is the confidentiality of it.
Yes.
And that addresses that issue of the stranger. There's a certain beauty, believe it or not, in seeing a stranger with your issues. Why? One, they're not biased. They don't know you. And the other thing is, what you tell them stays in that office.
Yes.
It doesn't go out. There's a couple of caveats that have to do with the health and well-being of the individual. But other than that stuff doesn't go out of the office.
Yes.
And there's a certain beauty in that. You can come and just dump, and that's not going anywhere else.
Yes.
Yeah. But going back to the fear and the weakness, one of the things that I've always done is applauded my clients in saying, it takes a tremendous amount of strength, of character, to one, recognize that you need help beyond yourself,
yes.
and two, to actually come in and share that with someone. It's huge. That takes a lot of strength.
Yes.
So I see it as quite the contrary. Going to therapy doesn't show weakness. It shows strength. It shows a willingness to really confront your demons
Yes.
and do something about them.
I agree. From the very first phone call they make, they're vulnerable. They're putting themselves out there trying to look for somebody. They know they need help. They've been led our way or the way of another therapist, and they pick up the phone and make that phone call, not knowing sometimes what they're going into, because just as we've had to learn to be a therapist, we also have to teach our clients how to be a client, and a lot of times in the first session, we like to let the clients know, if you feel like we're not a good fit and this isn't going to work between us two, going into the therapeutic relationship, then we want them to let us know so we can make sure that we connect them with somebody they feel like they can be comfortable with and open and share these issues that they're dealing with.
Right. One of the things that's in my agreement and contract at the beginning is the reality that there's no guarantees in therapy. Mm-hmm. It can work or not work. Mm-hmm. But as I tell my clients, a lot of it depends on the client.
Yes.
I don't read minds. Mm-hmm. If you don't give me the stuff to work with, I can't do anything. But also, as you were saying, and I have to really emphasize this, the importance of the connection between the therapist and the client, because research is really solid on this. 75% of the outcome of therapy is based on the relationship, not the therapeutic approach. So it doesn't matter if it's CBT, EFT, existential therapy like I was trained in. It doesn't matter to a degree. 75% of the outcome in therapy has to do with the relationship. So yes, I also say to my clients, if we're not connecting, for God's sakes, let me know, because that way I can, refer you on to someone who you may be able to connect with.
Yes.
It's really important.
And that's something that we don't want people to do, is leave therapy because they felt like they didn't connect well with us and not return to therapy with someone else. Or they come in for a couple of sessions and feel like, this isn't working, thinking that it's going to be an advice session, which we're not going to be like everyone else in their life. That's the beauty of having a therapist, is we're going to be a different person in their life. We're not there to share time with them. They don't have to listen to us when we listen to them. We're there to actively listen to what it is they're telling us and come up with an appropriate conclusion on what better ways they can either cope or move on from their particular situation. But we're not really there to tell them what to do. We're more there to kind of walk alongside them and help them recognize what it is that may be causing the problems that they're having.
You bring out some really good points in that, going back on what I was saying, the strength required to come into therapy, because it takes a lot of strength to stay in therapy. Therapy can be very painful. When you're doing individual therapy, it can be very painful. Yes. It requires the strength of character to be able to go through, face your demons. Give you a little story a client of mine gave me, almost 40 years ago. And she said the vision she had was of being on this huge plain where there was nothing around for as far as you could see. And she came up to this gorge, which was so deep there was no way you could climb down. And there was one bridge that crossed over. And she felt this incredible need to get to the other side. She had to get to the other side. So she started to cross the bridge. And there was a monster on the bridge, this huge, overpowering monster. But she felt the need to get to the other side so strongly, she started to go towards the monster. And she disappeared into the monster, realizing the monster was her. She was the one stopping herself from getting to the other side. And by going through the monster, she got to the other side. Wow. So it was just a very, very dramatic way of her explaining her challenge and how she saw it. It was beautiful. And I sometimes share that with my clients because, there's a point at which it is very painful and it is very difficult. But that's usually when the work's getting done. Yeah. And that's why I say it takes a lot of strength to be in therapy.
And we do have to disclose that with our clients in our first session.
Oh, yes.
You may feel worse before you feel better, but you're putting words to things that you've been thinking, things that you've been holding in for many, many years. There's power in talk therapy, and people often underestimate that power in just getting it out there. And I've had people say, I've never said that out loud. I feel so relieved. And just something as simple as one phrase that they've been carrying around with them. So just one little thing can make a difference with your clients, and being able to be there with them, like I said, to walk alongside. I often tell my clients, people in our lives, they want to slap a Band-Aid on us and pull us out of the trench and say, just feel better, it's okay, you'll get over it, and we're kind of there to get in the trench with them, figure out what's going on before we begin to pull them out of the trench. So
how would you encourage people to come to therapy? What would you say to people as you look out at the audience and you say, I want you to come to therapy? What would you say to them?
Well, I would just let them know that, we're made up of a physical body, a mind. Oftentimes people are willing to go join an exercise program when they've gotten bad news from the doctor that their heart's not doing well, or, they need to lose a few pounds or get active and get moving, but we don't think about mental health that way. What about exercising our mental state, checking in? Everybody has something going on that can use assistance. There's always life. If we're living, there's something going on. So just recognizing, hey, maybe my mental health needs some exercise. Maybe I need to get in, not thinking of our office as a doctor's office, but thinking of our office more as a gym where we're exercising our brain, and we're going to get that workout and kind of move us to a better direction of better functioning, lessen some of these symptoms we might be having, figure out what's going on that's causing me to be stuck in this area, or that's causing me to feel depressed, which is, I can't get up, I can't function like I used to, I'm foggy headed, I'm not on my A game like I used to. That happens to everybody. So why not come in and let's piece it apart and figure out what's going on, get some of that mental health exercise going.
That's a great way of looking at it. I never quite thought of it that way. That's a beautiful way of putting it. A lot of research has been coming out lately, by the way, picking up on that gym and health idea. A lot of research coming out with nutrition, and they're saying that serotonin, which is directly related to depression in the brain, hormone in the brain dealing with depression, actually originates in our gut. So there's definitely a nutrition brain depression connection, there. And one of the things that has been shown in the research is that exercise, aerobic exercise, running, swimming, that kind of thing, getting your heart pumping, actually is a better antidepressant than your antidepressants that doctors are handing out left and right. In mild and moderate depression. Severe still needs some medication to get them out of the bed. But so exercise and nutrition really are very much an important component in our mental health.
Yes.
So I hope to get someone also on the show who actually specializes in that as well, so in a future show.
And that's a good treatment and a good coping skill for anxiety and depression. Like, we have the tools just right on our own body to go out and take a walk. And I like hearing it from you, not only as a 40-year licensed marriage and family therapist, but also as a registered nurse. You know about medication, you know what it does and doesn't do, and you know that there are substitutes for antidepressants.
Yeah, it's sad because there's so many side effects to any medication. Well, all medications have side effects, but unfortunately with antidepressants there's some very serious side effects, including suicidality. It can actually increase the potential for suicide. So I really discourage people, from getting on medications for depression. It's much better. I mean, stop and think about it for a minute. All it does is deal with the symptoms. It doesn't deal with the cause.
Yeah. That's what we like to dig into.
Exactly. So that's what we come into. So I look at antidepressants as something that is given to people to give them the ability to come to therapy and work through their issues.
Yes.
Yeah. Because otherwise, it's a sad story. I mentioned this when I was on the Leslie Show. A woman who had gone to her doctor whose husband had died, and he put her on antidepressants, and she was on antidepressants for 5 years and still hadn't resolved the grief issues. And she came to see me, and we worked through her grief in only about 8 sessions, and she was fine. But she'd been on antidepressants for 5 years when she shouldn't have been on.
Yeah.
It was a grief issue, not depression. Grief and depression are two different things.
And giving her that opportunity to be open in that space with you, to talk about what she was feeling. 8 sessions after 5 years of being on medication, that just goes to show you that just having that person to talk to, that unconditional positive regard. Good old Carl Rogers.
Carl Rogers,
and just somebody that's there for you and only you, not there to to judge, non-judgmental space, and just be able to help you through whatever it is that you're experiencing at that time.
Yeah, I remember when I was in training, and our TA, teaching assistant, during the clinical practice, she was talking to me about what she had seen me doing with a client. And she said, why didn't you confront her about this or whatever it was? And I said, well, I didn't want to, hurt her. And she looked me straight in the eye and she said, do you care enough to say what hurts? And it stunned me. And I realized I'm not there to be nicey-nicey. I'm there to genuinely help this individual get through whatever they're going through and to confront them with the realities of their life, which can be horribly painful, But that's what we're there for.
Yes.
That's why I say, again, it takes a lot of strength to get into therapy.
It does. And once you've built that relationship and there's a sense of genuineness between you and your client, then you can come to a place where you're challenging them on these things that they're mentioning to you because you have built that foundation between the two of you. Right. But yet again, it stays there. And once they've worked through some things in our office, they're able to go out and function better in their real world, in their regular life, because they're not looking for somebody to listen to what they have to say about what they've been feeling, where no one wants to talk about it anymore. They're in there talking about it with us, and we're helping them to present themselves, more functionable once they've left our office.
Yeah. I want to touch briefly on couples therapy because we do see a lot of couples. And I have to admit that one of the things that I always say to my couples, individuals when they come in and it's a relationship issue, I have to sort of give them this almost like legal caveat. If you're going to come in alone to deal with a relationship issue, you will probably part company with whoever you're having a relationship with, simply because you will grow and they won't. Yeah. And then you will look at them and say, this isn't working. So if it is a relationship issue, I always encourage both people to come in, and then we can deal with the relationship. Not that you're crazy or he's crazy or she's crazy, but no. The relationship is the issue. Yes. And people have a difficulty with this because here again, they're afraid to come into therapy, and it's like, whoa, this isn't about you. It's about the relationship, that which exists between the two of you. And that's what we need to work on, how the two of you communicate, how you interact. What are you doing that's creating the problem? How is the other person perhaps reacting out of old baggage, So there's a lot of things that come into play in couples work that I find really dynamic and wonderful. But again, there's this fear that you're going to be seen as the identified client, you're the sick person. And it's like, no, this ain't about being sick. This is about having issues. As in my graduate training, it was sort of funny. We had a thing about people coming in to get fixed. And what we said is, I can't fix you because guess what? You're not broken. You've got some issues, some concerns, some things that are getting in your way, some dysfunction, but you're not broken. And it's like you've got to make sure the person understands they are a fully functioning person. They may have some issues that are getting in their way, but they're not broken.
No. It's like if you're with your partner and they're having difficulty breathing, you're going to run and get help, right? So if our relationship is having difficulty breathing, we're going to run and get help, and that's what we do. We run to a therapist, somebody that knows, because we only know what we know, and it helps to have somebody point out a different perspective. I think as marriage and family therapists, also bringing in families. We have children that are coming in, either small children or adult children, talking about how their family's functioning, and we can listen to that and help them, but all the more it helps us when mom and dad are coming in. We can watch the dynamics. We can see for ourselves how they're interacting and maybe where the breakdown may be, and give them a different perspective that way. So just bringing people in, that way we can kind of work on the whole system together and not just the individual.
Yeah, I like what you said there, because that's so often the case is there becomes this identified client. Often it's the child, which is unfortunate because you have to remember they may have gotten your genes, but it's your role modeling that helped create that individual. Excuse me. And so having the entire family come in and explore the dynamics, again, how they're relating, the relationships that are going on are so important, so that, no one person is walking away feeling like they're the crazy one.
Yes.
This is a real problem, because we do see people as being crazy, and it's like, no, they have issues, they have concerns. The vast majority of people are not crazy. They have issues, concerns, and they can work them through if they're willing to.
Yeah.
But there has to be that willingness to, again, come in and confront those issues in a healthy manner.
Yes.
Earlier, you had mentioned teaching the client how to be a client. Could you expand a little more on that? Because I have some ideas about what you were thinking, but I'd like to hear what it is you were thinking when you said that.
Yeah, so I think a lot of times because they're coming into our office and we're the professional, they think that we're the ones that are going to guide everything and steer their treatment and make all the decisions. However, they're the ones that are really in charge. They're in charge of where they want to go with their treatment. They're in charge of what they want to talk about. We're not there to force them to talk about anything that's making them feel uncomfortable or that they don't want to bring up. For example, they may leave your office on a Friday afternoon talking about one big topic or something that happened that week. They come back next Friday, we can open it up and talk about what happened last week, but oftentimes there's something else that happened and they want to go a whole different direction. And so just letting the client know you're in charge here. I'm going to follow you and go with you wherever you go. Of course, we're active listening. We're taking in this information and we're going to do something with that data to help them out. But it's up to them to go where they want to go in their treatment, not up to us to force them in any direction.
Yeah, I'm glad you said that. It was sort of interesting because just this morning, before I came to do the taping of this show, Walter, one of my colleagues, had come up to me and asked me for a quick consultation, and one of them was exactly about that, where the client was sort of feeling like, where are we going? And it's like, no, the direction is up to you. This is your session.
Yes.
You're the one that is going to determine where you want to go. And as you said, sometimes something will happen during the week before they come in again, because we usually do weekly sessions, and that will trump whatever they came in for originally. I remember once I had a client who kind of said, well, how are we dealing with my original issue? And I said, you have to remember, it's your issue. It's in you. It's always going to be there, and it'll come up when it needs to be worked on. So the client has to realize it's their session. As I get a lot of clients not a lot, thankfully, but every once in a while I get a few clients who come in late. So, I'm sorry I'm late, and I'm going, it's time off of your session, not mine. So I really appreciate you coming in and sharing your experience and knowledge with us. I've thoroughly enjoyed this, and I'll see you in my office.
All right, thank you.
Thank you for watching. At the end of the show, there is a email address which you can send questions, suggestions, and comments to, and we welcome those. This show is for you, and we want to do whatever we can to help you to understand the therapeutic process and those things that are commonly called mental illness. So look forward to seeing you next time. Thank you.